Join me as we round up a few of my favorite holiday DIYs. Welcome to the Sewing Report. I'm Jen. This channel is all about sewing crafts and DIY projects. As we get into the holiday season, I wanted to share a few of my favorite festive holiday DIYs with you. Some are new, never before seen, and there are a few from years past that are my favorites, so let's jump right in. Toilet paper's been the hot commodity in 2020. Here's a quick DIY for a funny little gag gift. I made a simple emergency use only graphic in Cricut Design Space. Don't forget to mirror the image. The Cricut Maker easily cuts out the heat transfer vinyl. Weed out the HTV by removing the vinyl you don't need. To apply to the toilet paper roll, I set the Cricut Easy Press temperature to 300 degrees Fahrenheit and flipped upside down. Lay a Teflon sheet on top to protect the material. Place the design exactly where you want it on the toilet paper roll. Then gently press the roll and rotate slowly, so all areas of the design hit the heated surface. Do this for a minute or so. Wait until things cool down a bit and carefully peel off the carrier sheet from the toilet paper. If the vinyl starts to come off with it, you need to press it a little bit more. Makes for a fun and still practical gift, in addition to being a quarantine essential. Let's take a plain coffee mug from the dollar store and jazz it up to look designer chic. I found a few holiday images in Cricut Design Space and cut out in linen-colored vinyl in the Cricut Maker. Then I weeded out the unnecessary pieces. You can see it's a snowflake and the phrase merry and bright. Info on the specific Cricut designs are below in the description box. I used Cricut brand transfer tape, and I have to say I wasn't super impressed. The tape didn't stick well to the vinyl, and I had to burnish the heck out of it, and even then had to finger press to transfer the design. If you've got a better alternative, leave a comment and let me know. The designs are a tad big for the mug, but they worked out alright. To help place the vinyl onto the curved surface, I snipped the tape and it did make applying easier. This was my first time ever applying vinyl with transfer tape, and I think I like it. This holiday mug turned out well for a beginner effort. On to a bigger project, a canvas throw pillow cushion cover. It starts with just 3 pieces of material, one 20 by 20 inches and two 20 by 16 inches. This is a simple envelope style cover. I did pre-wash the canvas. To coordinate with the mug, I wanted to do an embroidered snowflake design. Sulky sent me this sparkly 30-weight polystar thread, and I wanted to try it out. Beautiful thread and easy to work with. For more embellishment, I decided to add 2 lines of decorative stitching to frame the snowflake. I marked out sewing guidelines 4 inches from the edge of the top and bottom with an air-soluble pen. This is stitch number 17 on the Brother CS7000i. If you're very new to sewing, check out my Stitching Basics videos. The guideline helps keep my stitching straight. I just constantly watch that it's centered on my walking foot. Next up, finishing the raw edges on the back pieces. On one of the long sides of both 16 by 20 pieces, mark out a 1/2 inch from the edge. Fold on the line and press with an iron. I chose to glue baste these sections by applying Elmer's washable school glue and hitting with a dry iron. The glue should keep it in place until you sew it down. Fold in a second time and press. Here are my machine settings for top stitching the envelope closure ends. I lined up the edge with the right edge of the walking foot and used a longer stitch length because the canvas layers are thick. Constructing the pillow cover is pretty quick. Line up the back pieces with the front piece right sides together. I prefer my openings to run parallel to the design, with the side showing the inner fold facing up. Once again, glue basting makes this step easier and you don't need pins. Sew with the 1/2 inch seam allowance on all 4 sides. Here are my sewing machine settings on the Brother CS7000i. Because the canvas is so thick, 10 ounces, I selected the triple stitch for extra reinforcement. If you use the walking foot, set the needle position at 0.5 and line up the edge of your fabric with the far right metal guide. That will give you the 1/2 inch seam allowance. At the corners, stop with the needle down, lift the presser foot, pivot 90 degrees, lower the presser foot, and then continue sewing. Clip all the corners like this to eliminate bulk after turning right side out. To finish the raw seams, I went back around with a 3-step zigzag stitch in the seam allowance to cut down on the fabric fraying. Time to turn the pillow cover right side out and poke out the corners. My favorite pillow insert is the IKEA 20x20 Fodrar inner cushion, which has duck feather filling and costs less than $10. Insert the pillow, trying to pull each corner into the corner of the cover and fluffing into place. What a great way to add a little festivity to your home or gift over the holidays. I plan to make the pillow and holiday mug a matching set. How about a quick and adorable Christmas ornament? I tried out this Cricut project called Oh Happy Day Ornament Houses. It only requires a 12x12 sheet of cardstock and a few inches of twine or string. The design cut easily on the Cricut Maker using the scoring wheel and standard fine point blade. There were quite a few score lines to fold. I found it helpful to first glue down the main part of the structure, then the roof, and last, the bottom flap. Before folding the bottom flap in, run the string through the holes at the top of the roof. The knotted end is cleverly hidden inside the house. You can hang it on the Christmas tree or hide treats inside as a gift box. This is the Moo hardcover notebook, made from durable book cloth and has lay-flat Swiss binding and premium paper. Each one has contrasting color paper in the middle. Using a clear plastic roller, I attempted to find the center of the cover, and I made a chalk pencil mark lightly at the spot. Now let's get into Cricut Design Space, which I've been exploring as much as I can. I found a few options for monograms, and the specific elements I'm using are in the description box. So far, Cricut Design Space has been pretty easy to navigate, although for several weeks I could not use the text function at all. It was grayed out, then suddenly it was just available. I sized the letter to fit into the circle frame. By selecting both elements, you can center them together under the Align menu. You'll need to attach the elements so they don't separate on the cutting mat by again selecting both, then hitting the Attach button. I set the base material to Everyday Iron-On. And don't forget to mirror the image. Since you're using iron-on material, it will be reversed. This smaller design fit easily onto a leftover scrap of HTV. Cutting out the monogram took less than 2 minutes, and the weeding wasn't too bad, especially with the Cricut tool that looks like it's from the dentist. To prep the notebook, lay a Teflon sheet over it, and then the Easy Press 2 for about 5 seconds at 280 degrees. To find the center of the iron-on transfer, I gently folded it in half each way. Then line up the center folds with the mark on the cover. Doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Place the Teflon sheet over the monogram, try not to move it. At 280 degrees Fahrenheit, put gentle pressure on the Easy Press 2 for 30 seconds. Once it's cooled down, carefully peel off the carrier sheet. I had a lot of fun putting together this super easy bow hair clip. This is a clear winter-themed shaker pouch and chunky glitter fabric from Jewel Box Supply. The alligator clips are left over from another project. To form the bow, you fold the shaker pouch accordion style like this in the middle. When it looks the way you want, staple the section to keep it in place. The center of the bow is a strip of glitter fabric wrapped and glued around that pinched section. I used Beacon Craft glue, but there are many other options. To finish, glue the bow onto the hair clip and it's ready to wear to that holiday dinner. First, I'll show you how to piece, then construct the actual bag. We'll be piecing together 6 5-inch squares and a checker pattern with 15 of the 2.5-inch squares using that same method. One tip is to glue baste the fabric. You don't need pins and your piecing will be more accurate. Dab a thin line of Elmer's washable school glue within the seam allowance, place the other piece of fabric on top, and hit it with the dry iron. It should stay secure until you stitch it down. Match up a few pairs of squares to sew together, and this is where the chain piecing starts. For the 5-inch squares, I did 2 rows of 3 and basted together each row like this. These are my sewing machine settings. With a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew each unit together, then a couple stitches off the fabric, then insert the next unit without clipping thread or stopping. This uninterrupted sewing speeds up the process. If you're brand new to sewing, I recommend you watch my basic stitches video, which explains more. Now you'll have a chain of pieces, and I use the cutting gizmo seen here to separate each unit. I hit the seam with the iron to set in the stitches, and it's common to press fabric to the darker color side so the seam allowance doesn't show through on the lighter fabric. To glue baste the rows together, you'll find the seams naturally kind of nest in the right spot. Head back to the sewing machine and stitch down the entire row. Set in the seam by pressing it, and I folded it toward the side with 2 darker blocks. Press on the right side of the fabric to flatten everything down. You'll need to make 2 of these 5-inch block units. Onto the 2.5-inch blocks with the checker pattern. Start off by pairing 1 print square with 1 white square and glue baste these units. Make a bunch of these, but have quite a few extra because you'll need to add single squares to each row later. Chain piece the units over at the sewing machine with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Cut each unit apart. Press each unit open to the dark side. Start arranging them in a way you think looks good. No science to it, just experimenting. Glue baste new units comprised of 4 squares total. Chain piece again back at the sewing machine. Repeat clipping the daisy chain and pressing out the rows. Start laying out the rows to figure out the order and arrangement. Remember that the rows should alternate to create the check pattern. On the end of each row, you'll either need to add a white or print block. Glue baste 3 rows together using the same methods. I like to start from the center and work my way out to the ends. After sewing them together and pressing, you'll have a pieced section done, 3 rows of 5 blocks. I also found another use for the Cricut Easy Press too. It works great for pressing out quilt blocks. You'll need 2 of these, 1 for each side. From here on out, we're going to be constructing the bags. I made 2 sizes, large and extra large. They both go together about the same way, so I'll be demonstrating the large size, but showing the extra large steps that differ. These bags are color blocked, and you'll see the dimensions needed for the top and bottom pieces. I also added cute pom-pom trim, which I'll show you how to attach. First, I glued the trim to the top long side of the checker piece section. Run a line of basting stitches on the trim to keep it in place. These won't be visible, so don't worry about making them perfect. Place the top piece right side down over the trim. Glue again to the rescue. Both Fabri-Tac and Elmer's washable school glue worked, although the Elmer's takes a little time to dry. No need for pins or clips here. Sewing this seam down is a little tricky, but it's doable. You want to stitch just past where the trim ends, so slightly over a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Go slowly at the sewing machine and feel under the top layer to make sure you don't accidentally sew over the pom-poms. In my opinion, the walking foot is the best choice out of all the feet that come with the Brother CS7000i. Press the seam allowance towards the top piece. I decided to add a line of top stitching so the seams look neater. Sew the bottom piece on, press and top stitch. You'll now have 2 completed main pieces and will need to cut out 2 lining pieces for each bag. Here are the dimensions for the large size: 14 1/4 by 10 1/2 inches, and extra large 14 1/8 by 20 1/2 inches. Place the outer fabric right sides together and pin on 3 sides, leaving the top side open. Do this also with the lining fabric, but mark a section about 4 inches on the bottom side. You won't be sewing this part because it will be an opening for turning the project later on. Sew both pinned pieces on the 3 sides, back stitching at all the start and stopping points with a 1/4 inch seam. Remove the pins before getting to them. Don't sew over them. Make sure not to sew the marked section in the lining. At the corners, stop and lift the presser foot, then pivot 90 degrees, lower the presser foot, and keep sewing. Press the seams open on all sides. The Easy Press Mini actually helped make this a lot easier. To make the boxed corners, pinch them together. Here's my tip for matching up seam lines. Insert a pin right through the center and align it so it emerges in the center on the other side. Pierce the center closer to the tip, which should hold the placement until it's sewn down. Here's where a small clear square quilting ruler comes in. Measure out 1 1/2 inches from the tip into the seam line, and eyeball the markings on either side to ensure they are even from the middle out. Mark a line with disappearing ink or tailor's chalk. I'll also add more pins to reinforce the corner before sewing. For the extra large size drawstring bag, there is one difference, and that's to measure 2 inches in from the tip and marking a line. Repeat these steps for all the corners on the outer and lining fabrics. Stitch directly on this line at the sewing machine. Right before you reach the end, leave the needle down, lift the presser foot, pivot 180 degrees, lower the presser foot, and sew back into the same line to reinforce the stitches. Trim off the excess fabric at the corners, leaving about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Don't trim too much because you do need to account for some fraying of the fabric. The lining piece will have an opening in the bottom. Turn the outer piece right side out. Carefully insert the outer piece into the lining. Right side should be together. First, pin at the side seams and a few more around the perimeter of the top. Once again, these are my sewing machine settings. We're doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. From here on out, take off the front part of the machine to reveal the free arm. That's handy for sewing anything in the round, like bags or sleeves. Stitch the entire length and overlap an inch or so at the starting point to lock in place. Through the opening in the lining, gently turn the pouch right side out. It will take some wrangling, but it's cool to see this thing finally come to life. There will be some wrinkles to smooth out using your hands and an iron. It's very important to press that top seam well. Press the opening in the lining closed and press. I typically glue baste it shut until I sew it down. Push the lining into the outer portion, pressing the top opening seam well. Using a ruler and disappearing marking pen, measure and draw lines at 2.5 inches and 3.5 inches in from the top edge all the way around. For this bag, these lines will create the channel for the string. For the extra large size, mark lines at 3 inches and 4 inches instead. Sew directly on these lines with a 3.0 stitch length all the way around. Backstitch to reinforce the sections right before and after the side seam lines. With a seam ripper, carefully pick out the stitches on the outer side seam only in between the lines you just sewed. Clip off stray thread. You've now created openings to run your drawstrings through. 1/2 inch twill tape works well for these bags. Attach a safety pin to the end of the tape. Insert it into the channel and run through the entire way, coming out that same opening. Try not to get it twisted up inside, as you do want it to be flat. Leave some slack on both ends of the tape and clip the excess off. Remove the safety pin and with the 2 tape ends together, tie a knot. Repeat with the second piece of twill tape, but start running it through the opposite side. That's how you make the bag function with a working drawstring. Because cotton twill tends to fray, I applied some fray check to the cut ends and let it dry. And we're all done. Now you have a super cute, scrappy, lined, holiday-themed drawstring bag. Also, we've been doing a series here called Learn to Sew in 2020. You may have noticed I did use a combination of my sewing machines, embroidery machine, and new Cricut maker. And I do have more detailed videos on using all of those machines. So this video is all about beginner-friendly tutorials, so I do hope you find these helpful, and maybe that's your goal in 2021 is learning to sew. It is never too late, so let's jump on board and get started. If you find these videos helpful, be sure to let me know below in the comments, and also be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel, The Sewing Report, if you are interested in sewing crafts and DIY projects. I hope you all have a very safe and happy holiday season. I'll see you guys again in 2021. I'm Jen with The Sewing Report.